And then also, where is the tax bill going to be coming from? So, one of the things is once you look at that income plan, you see your lifetime taxes that you're going to, cumulative taxes that you're going to pay. Yikes. It's a big number. How can we get that number down lower? How can we kind of minimize that, not just 1 year, but all years? Welcome to Wealth Creator Radio, where we help people overcome the uncertainty of having enough retirement income. I'm your host, Eric Heckman, a certified financial planner with over 30 years of experience. We want you to enjoy life and not have to wonder where your money will come from and how long it'll last. My mission is to show you how to develop a personalized income plan so you can retire more and have worry less wealth. Here at Wealth Creator Radio, we cut through the noise and get straight to what matters. We understand that the world of retirement planning can be filled with confusing products, ever-changing tax laws, and volatile markets. That's why we're here to help successful people like you navigate the uncertainty and create a blueprint for a thriving, work-optional life.
Welcome to our show where we talk about retirement planning. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer. Eric Heckman is president of Heckman Financial right here in Silicon Valley. He is a certified financial planner helping people like you have remarkable retirements. Gosh, he's been doing this for over 30 years. It is his mission to help you plan for lifetime income so that you can weather any economic storm and to transform your retirement worries, we know you have them, to confidence. Here's our phone number. You may call or text this number. 800-454-1184. You can text the word visit if you like to text. Call for this complimentary appointment and you can get the digital toolbox also today. It includes Eric's book that he's written and a lot of other resources all about retirement. You can always find us online anytime at Wealth Creator Radio. With all of that, Eric, I'm so excited to get started today.
Yeah, I know. It's really important to be planning for retirement. And that's what we're going to be here today doing, is going over some key things that people need to know about.
Listen to this, Eric. 1 in 5 Americans think they'll never be able to retire. This is according to a new Axios poll. So 62% of people who are not yet retired think that Social Security is not even going to cover half their expenses. Only about a third of Americans actually have a written plan, which is what you say everybody needs. So we are going to go over some steps people can take to make sure they are prepared for retirement. And I love it because we're checking off boxes. It's as easy as that. We're going to give a retirement checklist today. So I'm excited to get started.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's scary that so many people, 80% think they won't retire, right?
Yeah.
And the reality is, yeah, I totally agree with most people thinking that Social Security won't be enough. That's a given. And so one of the scarier parts is what used to sound like way, way, way in the future. Now in around 2034, Social Security is going to be only able to pay for about 80% of its benefits. And nobody, it doesn't matter which political party you're talking to, nobody's bothering to do anything to fix that. And that's really scary because that's going to get to be from a known thing that was easy to fix to a crisis, and never good when you're having to fix it in crisis mode, right? A lot worse. So, there is some things that you need to definitely take care of on your own. And, David Walker, who was the, used to be the controller of the government, in our movie that I helped produce, The Psychology of Retirement, he talks about in there that still half of everybody who retires, their only source of retirement money is Social Security. So when you say over 60% don't think it'll be enough, yet half the people in retirement are living on it, that should be something that hopefully makes people pay attention.
Right. Red flag, big time, Yeah. So we're going to go through this retirement checklist today. We've actually broken it down into some key categories, which actually is part of your toolbox: income planning, healthcare, risk management, tax efficiencies, and estate and legacy planning. Those are all points that you address in your toolbox, your plan for retirees. So talk about just in general your process, please.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, you got to have an income plan. If you don't have that income plan, you're just unemployed, right? Because if you don't have a way to get income, how are you going to survive, right? So first and foremost, you got to have that. The second part about that is really investments, because obviously, where's the money going to come from? Okay, if you're lucky enough to have a pension, maybe, but for, like we said, Social Security. Beyond that, it's all your money. It's all your investments. So which investments are going to pay out how much, what's after tax do you get to actually keep, right? So that also then flips into taxes. Most people are ignoring taxes in retirement, and that is the number one expense in retirement is taxes. A lot of people say healthcare. It's like, boy, my gosh, it's nowhere near. Taxes are so much higher. Because if you have all this money in pre-tax things like 401ks, IRAs, you got to pay all that tax. And, healthcare, of course, pre-65, after 65 with Medicare, long-term care. And then lastly, legacy. Who's going to get your stuff when you're gone? Is it going to be somebody you like or the government or somebody else? So, we want to make sure that's all going the right place. So one of the cool things that we've set up in our digital toolbox that has, several different downloads of things like, will your money last as long as you do? Are you paying too much in taxes in retirement? The Social Security timing decisions, all that stuff's in there along with a great checklist. So we have a checklist that basically goes through, the things that you should take care of. And I'm pretty sure it's 34. The score is 34 is the high score. That's how many things you can get on there. But most people, when they take this quiz, they're 10 to 20 is their score, which is
not good.
Definitely not passing. Definitely not passing. Yeah. And so, but that's one of the things where it's like, okay, well, now at least you know what to focus on, right? Now you got a starting point. So, if you just want to keep something easy, you don't have to read much. It's just a 2-page checklist. We'll send that to you. All you got to do is text the word list to 800-454-1184. Again, text word list 800-454-1184 or download directly at wealthcreatorradio.com.
And thank you for joining us. This is Wealth Creator Radio with Eric Heckman. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer. So happy to have you along with us today. So, all right, let's just first start with income. A couple boxes you need to check off that involve your income when you're thinking about retirement. Your budget, you've got to have that written budget. And then just an estimate of what you're going to need each year in retirement. Talk about how you help someone understand if they've saved enough to cover all those expenses in retirement, anticipated expenses, I should say.
Yeah, well, it's almost, I guess, comical in the way that it's also kind of sometimes sad. But when I ask somebody how much they spend, and almost always they'll know how much they spend, like on their credit card, every month because they have to pay the bill, right?
Yes.
And then I'll say, well, what about property taxes? What about insurance? What about, gifts that you give out? What about, I'll mention some of these other things and they're like, oh, well, those are just extra stuff. Well, those extra stuff is sometimes, double what you spend on your credit card bill, right? Annually. So, that's one of the things that just mentally, for some reason, all of us have this mental block of how much we really spend. So that's the most critical. You can make 1 or 2% more in retirement and it's going to barely move the needle. But if you spend $500 or $1,000 more a month, it can really destroy a retirement plan. And so that's the thing I really have people focus on. And so my no BS budget is you just take your last 12-month bank statements, total up all the withdrawals, and divide by 12. That is really what you took out of your account. That's, no lying. Now if you move some of that money to savings and it stayed there, okay, then subtract that off. But, or into investments or something. But yeah, I find most people, it's 20 to 40% more than they think. And so that's big because then going back to what you said is how do I know how much I need to have saved? Well, that's going to, once we know how much you're spending, then we can see if that savings amount or the savings amount you're on track for will really work.
So the other thing we need to do is, talk about how our income sources are going to be taxed. I think a lot of us, if we have a pension or Social Security, we can figure that out. But what about everything else?
Yeah, that's the part that, people just forget about. I mean, if you have $1 million house and you owe $300,000 on your mortgage, most people think they have $700,000 of equity. Well, if you got $1 million in a retirement plan, I have yet to ever meet anybody who says I've got $700,000 of equity in my retirement plan. But it's the same difference. It's, you just don't see the mortgage, right? The mortgage on your retirement plan is the taxes that you owe. And if those tax rates go up, which we know they have to because the federal government hasn't paid their bills since the 90s, we're just putting everything on the credit card. So at some point, that time's going to flip. That's why we need to make sure that we've got that taken care of. So, again, really what you want to do is know where you're at, know where you stand, and get a copy of that checklist. So all you have to do is text the word list to 800-454-1184. Again, text the word list to 800-454-1184, or download directly at wealthcreatorradio.com.
If something's worth doing, it's worth doing right. There's a particular time of life this phrase couldn't be more appropriate. How can you know you'll live the retirement you've always imagined? After all, life can be so unpredictable. You've worked hard and saved. Watch your accounts go up and down with the market. Your advisor says, don't worry, you'll be fine. But you still don't feel confident. Eric Heckman at Heckman Financial has a checklist to help you find out if you're on the right track for retirement. If you can check all the boxes with confidence, you may be ready for retirement. If not, Eric can help you address any potential costly mistakes. To get Eric Heckman at Heckman Financial's complimentary checklist, call or text LIST to 800-454-1184. Call or text LIST to 800-454-1184. Firm offers insurance services. Investment advisory services offered through Heckman Financial and Insurance Services, Inc. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Hi, I'm Luann Fulmer here with Eric Heckman. He is president of Heckman Financial. So happy to have you along with us today. You know, there's a song that Rod Stewart wrote, and one line in it, well, the name of the song is Ooh La La. I don't remember it. Do you remember that, Eric? Ooh La La? Rod Stewart?
Yeah.
You do?
So,
okay.
yeah.
Well, the line in it says, I wish I knew what I know now when I was younger. And how many times have we all wished that? You know, I'm like, oh man, wish I knew then what I know now. And then there's a freelance copywriter, and she recently wrote things that she would tell her 20-year-old self. So I thought it would be kind of fun to ask you, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self, Eric?
Yeah, well, we all wish we had done stuff differently, right?
Exactly.
So, I mean, I think when you're younger, the kind of big thing is, of course, one is just avoiding debt, avoiding the temptation of everybody, just, click, tap, 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 right? You don't have to insert your card anymore. And, so that's one hazardous thing is trying to keep up with the Joneses or buying all the latest and greatest. And most of that stuff you end up throwing away anyways after a while, right? So, so that'd be one thing, just watch how much you're spending. But, probably more importantly, just really funding some money in Roth, be pre-tax, but also have enough money in savings. And then if you want to move up to the next level, whatever that is, if it's a bigger apartment or trying to buy a place or something, save up ahead of time, have that 3 to 6 months of savings for that debt load or for that, that spending level that you have now. So if you're spending, say it's $3,000 a month now, but you want to be spending $5,000 a month. Well, okay, let's make sure you have that money saved up. Let's see if you have 30,000 sitting in the bank, then you're now have the savings for somebody who's spending $5,000 a month, right? So then go up to the next level. But most people, what they do is they get the debt, and then they don't have the money to do the savings, and then they wonder why they never have the money. And then they start figuring out when they're 40 or 50, and it's a lot late then, right? So then that's when we start talking about, I wish I'd done that when I was 20, right? So so I think that's one of the critical things is really having that savings first, and planning ahead a little bit better versus just going out and doing all the stuff you want to do. Yeah,
that's the bad thing. You start your career and you have the, finally have money, and then you start spending, and then you get in debt. That was my husband and I. What you just said, that was my husband and I. And then we're like, okay, here we go. We got to get serious, coming up here, getting closer to retirement. So if you look back at your life, so in your 20s, you're laying the groundwork really, truly for your, financial future. Like I just said, my husband and I. In our show, we talk about the stages of retirement, but financial planners say there are 5 financial stages of life. So we're going to kind of go over those right now. Your clients, are around probably my age or older, so they probably have, maybe kids or grandkids in this first stage of life. So talk about that, and we want to talk about paying forward information to the next generation to help them do better.
Yeah, well, like I said, big thing would be savings and debt. So buy the stuff that you can afford, not the stuff that you want, right?
Yeah.
So, which is tough to do. And so, so start building up that savings, have that, that ideally that 6 months of expenses saved up. Then you can go out and buy some of that other stuff. But also along the way, you got to be at least funding that match, getting up to, if you're working at a job, at least get that match. And nowadays, of course, a lot of people are just doing the gig economy type stuff, right? They might have, smaller, littler jobs type of things that add up to a full-time job. And you may not have those matches. Well, you still need to be putting money away. So that's a big one is, try to at least be putting at least 5% away long-term when you're in your 20s, because that money will grow to be huge, down the road. But I think that's kind of the debt and the savings would be the first ones. And, then once you get past that, then you can start doing a little bit more sophisticated planning or whatever you want to call it.
Okay. So after that early career, then, you start having kids and, building your career, right? Getting into the positions that you want. So let's talk about those financial steps that are happening.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing, especially in the Bay Area, a lot of people, they want to get that ideal house. Well, that's sometimes a really bad way to go. I used to play Monopoly a lot as a kid and still undefeated. I almost don't want to play anymore because I don't want to lose. But every time I played Monopoly, I would always buy the cheapest houses. I would buy all the cheapest properties because you could very easily get houses put on them and hotels and all that. And you almost always end up winning. And whoever wants to save up for the expensive ones can never do much with them.
Interesting.
And so same thing with, when you're first starting out, just get into some sort of real estate. And amazingly, after 5 or 10 years, you're going to have some equity in there. Then you'll be able to move up to that next house. Mm-hmm. But if you wait to save up a little bit more, guess what happens to that price of the house? It goes up a lot more, a lot more. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes just getting into something is worth it. So that'd be one thing. Like I said, having that savings, building up that saving, that retirement, this is where you would need to start probably plowing a little bit more money away too, is once you do have that house, then okay, how do we ramp up these savings? How do we, start building that money up more? Because as you are starting to age more, you want that money to be growing over time. And, the more time you have, the easier it is for that money to grow. So, I think it's one of the big critical things. Okay.
Now, do you work with people in these first two stages very often in this part of financial life that we're talking about?
No, not too much. Okay. We do for a lot of our adult children of our clients. So, so we've met with a lot of them, and they'll come in and, ask some questions. And, sometimes, we do work with some younger people. I mean, I've also had some younger people that want to retire at 50 or 55. And so to me, they're like somebody who's trying to retire at 65, right? Mm-hmm. So, so we will work with those. But I think people in these earlier stages, it's more about just getting the basics, right? Making sure you've got all insurance stuff covered, life insurance, all that type of stuff, that you've got that money being put away, trying to save that 15% between long-term, short-term, and medium-term money. Those are the big keys. And so, that's something where there's a lot of online stuff. You could also, there's a lot of other financial advisors that you look at, and that's something we refer people to, even if they need that help too.
Yeah. So there are a lot of really good people that can help, savers with their money, and you can grow your money and all that with those type of advisors. But you mostly work with people who are closer to retirement.
Yeah, exactly. So for us, we're working with people that are doing that shift, because that shift can be hazardous, right? So there's a lot of mess ups that you can do in your 20s and 30s and overcome them in your 40s and 50s. Oh yeah. It's not as easy, but it's doable. If you mess up something in your 60s, it's really hard to fix it in your 80s. So you get one retirement. And so that's why you really want to have good, solid advice when we're talking about that payout phase, when you're starting to withdraw the money, because it's also really freaky for people. It's so funny. I mean, I had this couple in here, Al and Tina, and they were doing that shift. He worked for PG&E, and he's doing that shift into that retirement. And I was telling him that a lot of people just have emotional issues, literally taking that money back out. And I think he heard me the first time, but he didn't listen to me. And then, the next time we met, he's like, "Wow, you are so right." You told me this thing about, people freak out, and he repeated what I said, which was pretty funny. And and it is something that I think a lot of people just don't quite get. And then there's just so many decisions too. It's a lot more complicated than people think.
Right. Now, would you say, is it ever too early to start thinking about retirement?
Oh my gosh, no. Yeah. I mean, that's, going back to, what you, would have done when you're 20. I mean, just, if you look at the compounding, well, the rule of 72 basically says if money doubles, if you earn 7%, it doubles basically every 10 years. And so if you think about that in your 20s, if you just put in 1,000, that 1,000 could be then 2, then 4, then 8, and 16,000. Well, what if you did that multiple times, right? I mean, all of a sudden you've got all this money there when you're older versus if you wait to start when you're 40. Well, you miss 2 of those doublings, right?
Yeah.
So it's pretty brutal to try to wait that long. I mean, you're not going to have to get super accurate, right? This is just, are you somewhat in the general direction, right? It's like, am I if you're trying to drive across the country, am I at least heading east? You may not be on the right road, but at least you're in the right direction generally, correct? So that's really what you're talking about when you're younger. And so one of the things we have set up is a lot of great tools in our digital toolbox. And, these are things like, will your money last as long as you do? Are you paying too much in taxes in retirement? Social Security decision, even my book, Worry Less Wealth, which is, really from people 50s and on. And that's all sitting there free of charge for you. It's quick, easy reads and downloads. All you have to do is text the word toolbox to 800-454-1184. Again, text the word toolbox, 800-454-1184, or download directly at wealthcreatorradio.com.
Be sure to like and subscribe to Wealth Creator Radio so you can stay up to date on ways to build your wealth and create a retirement you and your family will enjoy for years to come. Like and subscribe today and create your wealth for tomorrow with Wealth Creator Radio.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer here with Eric Heckman. It's no surprise that what's right for your money now probably won't be the case in about 10, 20 years from now. There are 5 main stages to your financial life. Okay, that's what we're talking about today. And this stage that we're getting to, the 3rd stage, is really, really important. These are your pre-retirement years. And Eric, this is who you work with. Again, it's an exciting time for these people. Their house is probably paid off. Hopefully their kids are off the payroll. And you are in your peak earning years. But it's also a time of life when you cannot afford to ruin it with the wrong financial moves, right?
No, exactly. And around here, probably in Silicon Valley, your house probably isn't really paid off. Every once in a while, you run into those people who were able to do that, but at least hopefully you're not refinancing and taking more cash out or anything like that. And then I do agree, yes. So hopefully the kids are off the payroll. It's always one of my first questions: is the bank of mom and dad closed, or is it still operating? And often it's still operating. So yeah, you do have to watch that. Because I had one couple that I think she was spending about $3,000 or $4,000 a month on their adult children.
No,
and they're trying to retire, and so that was a big bone of contention between the two of them. Was we got to cut them off a little bit, this would be when you're starting to have to like position the money in the right spots, right? Because of when you're having the money grow, you just, put it in there. Hopefully it works. Those ups and downs in the market don't really matter, right? Because as long as they just keep putting money in, it'll come back and all that type of stuff. Well, that works until you have to start withdrawing it, right? So this is where you have to start paying attention to where those placements are. So this is when you start having to go, oh, well, do I have a lot of foundational money, stuff that's not in the market? Because your 401k forces you to have 100% of your money in the market, which is stocks and bonds. What we want to have is have some money that's guaranteed, ideally that's earning some good interest, maybe 5 to 9% or something like that. But something that's earning you some good money that can't go away, because on those bad years, you can go take that money from there. Good years you take from the market.
Mhm.
Also, in between there, we usually want to have some steady income stuff. That steady income money is really stuff that investments that are less volatile, that pay you some really good dividends. So again, they give you cash flow. Now, when you're still not retired, you don't necessarily need that cash flow, but it can build up in your portfolio and take advantage of certain times. But yeah, that's what you need to start doing, is shifting the money, not 100%. It's not like you're doing you passed it, you got to do a U-turn, right? Recalculating. No, we're not doing that. We're just talking about, let's start shifting and start, getting over there, getting in that general direction and making those changes. Because also it's one of those things where you don't want to do it all at once, right? Because who knows what the economics of that time frame will be when you make that decision.
Right. And that's like my husband and I right now. We're trying to shift, money into our Roth so that we can reduce those taxes in the future. So that's where we are right now. And just thinking about, how we're going to be able to maintain the current lifestyle that we have. What about thinking about plans for healthcare? Is this also the same time you should be doing this time that you should be doing that?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is really a big time to be planning for, the 5 areas that we always talk about when we talk about the blueprint to worry less wealth. And so first is having an income plan, right? Making sure that you've got that money that is going to be able to pay out. Where's it going to come from, right? Will it last long enough? Are you, mostly on track, or do you have to move those dates out farther, right? So that'd be one of the things. And obviously investments, how you're investing it, which we kind of just talked about, is making some of those changes. You brought up Roth, how can we lower taxes? What tax moves should we be making? Healthcare is a big one, because if you're pre-65, it's going to be probably $1,000 per person for medical. And once you turn 65, it's probably 300 or 400. So big difference between those two.
Yeah.
And, when are you going to retire, pre or post 65? That's a big one. And then, then obviously legacy, who's getting your stuff? Are your assets titled in the right way? So, that's one of the things that you really want to be looking at, is all 5 of those areas, and start having a plan, for those, because it is really critical that you do have that plan. And, that's one of the things that we do here at Heckman Financial is, we actually go through that whole process. First, we have just a quick 30-minute phone call where we just talk to people about what their worries are, what their concerns. And then if it makes sense, we'll actually go through that whole blueprint. We'll go through all those 5 areas, tell you where you're headed, free of charge right now. We've been waiving that planning fee. And so that's one of the things that we can do, is actually help you go see where you're going to be. And then we'll tell you what's working, what's not, and what things you might want to change. Again, this is just critical information to be getting, especially if you're in that pre-retirement zone and that phase of life. So all you have to do is, if you want to set up a quick time to talk with me, Eric Heckman, text word VISIT to 800-454-1184. Again, text word VISIT 800-454-1184, or book directly online at wealthcreatorradio.com.
And you are listening to Wealth Creator Radio with Eric Heckman of Heckman Financial. He and his team at Heckman Financial work with this stage that we're talking about, pre-retirees and then in retirement. And, Eric will say their system is working very well. They've been helping retirees just like you, and Eric is reaching out to you. That's why we do this show every weekend. So getting that financial checkup would be a good time in pre-retirement years to make sure you're on track. And then you already kind of talked a little bit about making that transition from saving for retirement to now you're pulling out money, but you also have to generate income in retirement. So tell us a little bit about that, Eric.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you kind of visualize it, which is always fun on the radio, right?
Yeah.
So, but think about different buckets, right? So you've got your tax deferred bucket, which unfortunately for a lot of people is their biggest bucket. This is your 401ks, IRAs, and all that stuff. This is stuff that you haven't paid tax on. So you got that bucket has a lot of little gotchas, right? Depending on how much you take from there. You got your taxable bucket, which might be your savings and stock accounts, brokerage accounts. That's got a lot less tax ramifications. And then you got the tax-free bucket, which unfortunately is usually the smaller one. That's the Roth IRAs and life insurance and other things that are tax-free. What we want to do is figure out how much should we be taking from each one of those. And then you can actually decide what your tax bracket will be, which seems weird. But when you're working, you just get your W-2 and do your tax return, and it is what it is.
That's that, yeah.
Yeah. So, but in retirement, depending on which bucket and how much you took from which one, that's going to dictate a lot of stuff about your taxes. If you take too much money out of your tax deferred bucket, your IRAs and 401ks, that might cause your Social Security bucket to get taxed heavier. That's things that people don't tell you about, right? That's the stuff that your tax advisor won't mention because they don't see that you had options of taking it differently, and they're always reporting backwards. So this is where you have to be planning ahead for that next year. Where's that money going to come from? So yeah, it's got to be, and then of course, like you said, these investments need to start generating income. They need to be giving dividends, giving other things, because say if you need to take 4% of your money out and you only have 2% of your portfolio paying dividends, that means you're selling 2% of your shares every month. Well, if the market's up that month, that's not bad. But if it's down for a few months, that means you're selling more shares, selling more shares, selling more shares. And then when the market comes back, those shares are gone. So yeah, that's what makes it a lot more critical.
Eric, this has been great. We've covered a lot of information here about the stages of your financial life. How can people get more information?
Yeah, well, like I said, you need to get once you get to that pre-retirement and then that payout phase. Yeah, you need to have a plan. You need to have a lot of data. You need to know what you're doing. Yeah, you don't want to just wing it and hope it works. So yeah, I think education's the best way to do it. So we put up a lot of great resources there at that digital toolbox. My book, Worry Less Wealth. Are you paying too much taxes in retirement? The Social Security decision. Will your money last as long as you do? And even a link to set up a time to talk with me, Eric Heckman. So if that's something you want to do, all you have to do is text the word toolbox to get all this great data. Again, text the word toolbox to 800-454-1184. Again, text the word toolbox, 800-454-1184, or download directly at wealthcreatorradio.com.
Imagine for a moment that an intense storm is pounding your house. Will the roof leak? Will the siding peel away? Will your basement flood? If your house is properly built and maintained, you'll be fine. But what about your 401k or your investments? The stock market has had a great run the last few years, but is its current turmoil making you feel uneasy? Are you confident your portfolio is built to weather the financial storm? Now may be a great time to have your retirement plan inspected. Call Eric Heckman of Heckman Financial at 800-454-1184 now. Eric will examine your portfolio and show you if your investments are in need of some weatherproofing. Call Eric Heckman of Heckman Financial today at 800-454-1184. That's 800-454-1184. Investment advisory services offered through Heckman Financial Insurance Services, Inc., a registered investment advisor.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer here with Eric Heckman. And planning for retirement can feel like a really big deal, right? But who better to learn from than people who've actually done it? So today, Eric Heckman is going to take us through 5 very simple tips from real retirees. These are people who've been there and done that. And they're going to, or Eric's going to give us these tips. We're going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, and we'll talk about each one. So Eric, straight from retirees' mouths, what's tip number 5?
Yeah. So tip 5 is really just, live below your means. Start, before you get to retirement, put some of that money away, right? Spend, have your current self reward your future self by, putting some money in. Very simple. Doesn't seem like hard, but it's, we all wait till later. We all think we're going to have more later, and then they don't do it. Obviously, once you're in retirement, you need to have an monthly income spending amount. So you also know how much you're going to be living on in retirement.
Right.
And that will adjust over inflation. It'll get higher and higher. So one thing I've got one client, Beth, that, she comments on how the fact that, her spending levels almost doubled, and she's not doing tons of fancy trips or anything. It's just normal inflation from when she originally retired. So yeah. So it's not only just spend out now, less now and put it away, but make sure you also have enough growing in retirement at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Live within your means always, your whole entire life. Good advice. Thank you. Okay, what is tip number 4? This is advice from retirees who've been there and done that.
Well, very, very similar in scope. There is also structure that, force it, have it be automatic, that savings. So simple, easy one. If you're working for a company that's got a 401k, yeah, start funding that. Usually they'll give you a match. So instantly you're gonna get more money just because of that. Even if they don't have a match, they'll do it. Ideally though, if you can do the Roth 401k, which pretty much all 401ks now have, it doesn't matter what income, anybody can fund a Roth 401k. And so, yeah, if you put that money in there, you're not going to get the tax savings, but all that money is going to be yours. So, you're not going to have a big, huge, tax bill at retirement, which most of my clients end up having. So, if
Yeah.
you can prevent that or sooner, then that's better. And then even stuff for like just having so much money go into savings accounts, so much money to go to certain spots, so that way you're kind of pre-funding all those expenses, and that way you don't end up on credit cards with credit card debt and all that
Wow.
nasty stuff. So that's how you avoid it.
And you guys can kind of come alongside people as they're getting ready to head into retirement. That's what our show's all about, is helping people make sure they're making, the best decisions with their money. You help them come up with a plan. So, talk about that. And, we're offering a chance for people to come in, get your toolbox. So explain all of that. And these are all ways to help retirees as they're heading into retirement.
Yeah, no, certainly for, in terms of having a plan, the biggest thing you need to do is have an income plan. So the income plan shows you, okay, this is how much money I have, Social Security, whatever other guaranteed spots, but I'm going to spend this much. What's that gap, right? What's that difference? And then once you figure that out, you're going to have two other things to look at. Where is that money going to be invested to put off that income, put off those monies for that gap? And then also, where is the tax bill going to be coming from? So, one of the things is once you look at that income plan, you see your lifetime taxes that you're going to, cumulative taxes that you're going to pay. Yikes. It's a big number. How can we get that number down lower? How can we kind of minimize that, not just one year, but all years? So, once you have that kind of in place, then obviously you need to have a healthcare plan, figure out how, if you're going to try to retire before 65, after 65 with Medicare, all that. And then, finally, who's going to get your assets, right? Your legacy plan, and who's going to get, where's all those funds going to go after you're gone, right? So you want to have all those 5 areas, so that income, investment, taxes, healthcare, legacy, that all needs to be taken care of. You have a plan, even if you don't know what it is. So it's better to have one that you pick versus one that is just, you ended up with.
Right.
And so, yeah, so that's one of the things that we can help people with. One thing we've set up is a digital toolbox where you can get a lot of great information, like, will my money last as long as I do? What's the Social Security timing decisions? So all those kind of things, which are really useful, quick reads to get the data. And then also we have a copy of my book, Worry Less Wealth, and even a way to set a time to talk with me, Eric Heckman. So all you got to do, super simple, is just text the word toolbox to 800-454-1184. Again, text the word toolbox, 800-454-1184, or download directly at wealthcreatorradio.com.
It's that simple. Eric is here every single weekend helping give you a chance to understand what you need to be doing for retirement. He is a certified financial planner. He has the education behind him and the experience. He's been in financial planning for 30 years. He focuses on helping retirees. So that is why we are here, and just, urging you to take us up on this chance to go in and see him, visit with he and his team at Heckman Financial, complimentary. So thank you for joining us. This is Wealth Creator Radio. I'm Luann Fulmer here with Eric. We are going over retirement planning tips from real retirees. These are retirees who are in retirement. They've been there and they've been sharing their tips. So tip number 5, live below your means. Tip number 4, structure your savings. And so what's tip number 3, Eric?
Well, invest in your health. And this is definitely a big one. And this is one that I think everybody also has regrets on, right? So,
Yeah.
if you can do stuff sooner, it's going to be a lot easier to fix. It gets a lot harder if you wait too long. So, yeah, just staying active, at least if you own that 30 to 45 minute walk-in every day or something like that. It doesn't have to be super complicated, but, making sure that you're actually getting out there and you're doing stuff, because, now with medical technology, you might be able to live a long time, but if you're living a long time and you're not very able to get around or do much, that's not as fun, right?
Right.
So we want to make sure, you stay healthy, stay active, and keep moving. So, luckily most of my retiree clients are doing that. They're having fun stuff, doing stuff, volunteering, staying active. But definitely, yeah, you don't want to be just sitting there watching TV and
Mm-mm.
hearing all the ugly news all day long or something like that. So,
Yeah.
right.
We know what that
Yep.
leads to, just over
Yeah.
anger, and nobody needs that type of anxiety in retirement for sure. Okay, what
Yep.
is tip number 3 number 2? That was tip number 3, number 2.
Well, tip two would be just don't rush into retirement. You can look at the plan and make sure it works. Cause like I had somebody early on in my career, he took Social Security at 62 and he figured, well, who cares? Cause, I getting, 8% interest in the bank. Well, guess what happened? Those bank account interests went down to,
Yeah,
0.01,
yeah.
2% and stuff. And yeah, now all of a sudden he was 70 and regretting, him starting Social Security so early because yeah, he retired in one economy, but the economy that you retire in is not the one that you may live in and during
Right.
retirement, right? Things
Mhm.
change. And
Yeah.
and so yeah, so it was really tough for him because yeah, all of a sudden he did not have nearly as much interest as he thought he was going to have, and kind of knew he was going to have, even though he shouldn't have not that because
Thought
it
he
wasn't really
knew.
known. It
Right,
wasn't
yeah.
guaranteed, right? So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Okay, so tip number 2, don't rush into retirement. What is tip number 1? Drum roll. Tip number 1.
yeah. Well, kind of similar to I think. Well, was it four? Just start saving early. Just that tiny little amount. My boys are in their 20s. It's like, okay, come on, guys, fund those Roth IRAs or get
Mhm.
that 401k going. Get some money put away because yeah, it's just that little bit of money can be just huge. I mean, the power of compounding is just insane. When you compare like somebody, there's one example of somebody where was it for 7 years? I think from 23 to 30, they put away 7,000 versus somebody from 30 to 65 puts away 7,000. And they basically end up with the same amount of money, even though one only funded for 7 years and the other one did for 35 because of
Wow.
those early years are so huge by the time you're at retirement. So yeah, so again, but we mostly work with those people who are about to do that shift into retirement. So knowing that you're gonna be good, knowing you're gonna be great, all you have to do is to get that access to that info is text the word toolbox to 800-454-1184. Again, text the word toolbox 800-454-1184 or download directly at wealthcreatorradio.com.
Thinking about healthcare costs, long-term care expenses, and income needs in retirement? How will you afford it all? And what can you do now to help ensure your loved ones will be okay when you're gone? Eric Heckman at Heckman Financial has access to tools and strategies that can help you pursue your retirement dreams without taking on too much risk with your money. Interest rates are the highest they've been in decades, so take advantage of this seemingly once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to help protect your retirement before it's gone. Learn about the tools and features available today that could provide bonuses, potentially adding up to tens of thousands of dollars in additional income when medical needs arise. Schedule your visit with Eric Heckman at Heckman Financial today by calling 800-454-1184. That's 800-454-1184. These opportunities won't last forever, so call now to help protect your future. 800-454-1184.
Hey, thank you for spending part of your day with us today. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer here with Eric Heckman, and here we are in our final segment. I always love this segment, Eric, because you give us a story, about a retiree. Right now, we're going to have you share with us a wealth success story. We always like to hear these, and it's kind of, an idea of, okay, they did that. I need to do that too. So what do you have for us today?
Yeah, well, this one's more about, we'll just call them Al, but, they were the kind of there used to be a book, The Millionaire Next Door kind of people where they just didn't do crazy stuff. They took trips with their kids. They did stuff, but, not super elaborate ones, not super expensive ones, and such
Hmm.
like that. Just always put away money, never paid for stuff on credit or anything like that. And just plugged away. They never had huge, stock options. They weren't, he was more of a blue collar worker, retired with a little bit of a pension. So that definitely helps. But
Hmm.
right now they don't even need the money that they'd saved up because of the pension. Social Security's enough. They've paid off their house, done all that stuff. And it just sounds always boring. It's like, right. You just did all
Yeah,
the stuff that you're supposed to do. And
right.
but it actually works, So sometimes it's why that people tell you that stuff does work. And,
Be boring.
right. Yeah. On the flip side of that, though, I have had some clients that have done very well in terms of the stock option games and stuff like that. But the ones that I think are the most successful are the ones who realized it could go away.
Yes.
So, we have one that he recently just here retired from Apple and stuff, and he retired in his late 50s. So that was their big goal. And for last 7-8 years, we've just been selling off so much and putting in stuff that puts out lots of income. And so he's retiring, but his income will be almost the same as it was, not counting stock options, but his base income will be almost the same from these assets that we've diversified that are there. So the rest of his Apple shares, we don't really, in essence, care about because it's going to be going up and down or whatever, but he's not needing to live off those. And so, you want to talk about being able to retire and be able to be happy with things, right? And be content. If you've got, a lot of money coming in the door, all your spending's taken care of, you're able to go buy it, they're building a new house and paying cash for it and stuff. So, so they're able to do all those things. And so, either way works, right? It's just, okay, did you get lucky enough to have some stock options? Or even if you didn't, if you just saved a bunch and put it away and, and just kind of ignored things, right? Didn't freak out every time the market was coming or, changing things around and just keep doing it over time. Yeah, it does work out. And, now some stuff is okay. Can we do some more stuff to shift and lower the taxes? That's what we're working on, focusing on now. So, I think today now more people, if they're funding Roth and not putting money in because the government's not paying their bills, the Congress doesn't seem to ever want to bounce the budget again. So, until we go back to paying our way, your taxes are going to go up. So that's why you want to make sure you're well protected. Thank you for tuning in to Wealth Creator Radio. I'm Eric Heckman, and it's been a pleasure guiding you towards a more confident and secure retirement. Remember, my responsibility is to always do what's right for you, our client. Together, we can cut out that fancy-sounding financial jargon that doesn't help and focus on what truly matters for your financial future. If you're ready to take control of your retirement planning and build a personalized income plan, contact us at 800-454-1184 and text the word Toolbox to schedule a complimentary consultation. If you're looking for more resources and tools to build your retirement future, don't forget to check out that Wealth Creator Toolbox, your toolkit for a secure and confident retirement journey. Until next time, retire more and worry less with Wealth Creator Radio.
Information provided during Wealth Creator Radio is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute investment, tax, or legal advice. Information has been obtained from sources that are deemed to be reliable, but their accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action. Annuity guarantees are based solely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing company. Individuals should thoroughly review the contract for specific details of the product features and costs. Income payments and withdrawals from deferred annuities are generally taxable as ordinary income in the year they are taken. Eric Heckman offers investment advisory services through Heckman Financial and Insurance Services, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Any tax advice given as part of this presentation is not intended to be used and cannot be used by the taxpayer for the purpose of avoiding tax penalties or promoting, marketing, or recommending to another party any matter or transaction addressed herein. The views and opinions expressed in the program are not necessarily those of the radio station or its sponsors, and they should not construe as legal, tax, or investment advice. You should always consult the appropriate advisor before making any financial decision.